you either pay the money to get your goods released or you're going to lose your life. It's that serious with these people. They're that crazy. It started when I kept seeing Saracens on the TV. It was a six-wheeled vehicle that looks really futuristic, and in the 60s and 70s it really was a futuristic kind of a vehicle. And I always promised myself I'd have one of these vehicles, not knowing in those days that you could actually collect them. But I always just said, well, I'd love to have one of those. 20 years later, when I found out you could get these vehicles and I had the money, I then started looking around and see if I could find one. As it happens, literally 20 miles down the road, some chap had some Russian Zills, some Russian military trucks. Amazingly, they were going for next to nothing. They were basically giving these things away.
Not the easiest things to climb into.
Yeah, so now I've got, all told, 51 vehicles. That includes a couple of trailers. We always class them because they're military vehicles, even though they're trailers. My plan is to get it up to at least 150 for the museum. But I want to include in that obviously some aircraft and some other bits and pieces. The financial side of it is getting more and more difficult. First of all, you've got the people who are trying to sell them now think they can charge big numbers. The second thing is you've got a lot of people who are in the business to make money, whereas before it was just a bunch of collectors collecting vehicles. The market has opened up massively. But what it's also done, whilst it's attracted some, I hesitate to use the word genuine and honest traders, because I'm not sure there's many of those in our industry. But whilst it's attracted some reasonably genuine traders, it's also attracted some very nasty side of the industry, because in places like the Ukraine, where the mafia is still incredibly strong, if you try and buy a vehicle in the Ukraine, it's almost impossible to extract it, because the moment the mafia recognise someone's coming from abroad and bought a military item, they're there. And it gets to the border and it never gets from the border. There's been a number of occasions where people have bought these vehicles, got them to the Ukrainian border to go into either Hungary or Poland, and found they don't get there. They're confiscated before they get there by the mafia, and that you are asked to pay serious money. In Russia, the same thing happens. It's very difficult to extract from places like Russia. You've got to be very careful. The government's got to be involved. The government's got to have written all the papers, and you've got to almost have a military escort. My next step with the collection is to turn it into a proper museum. How I'm going to do that is involved is the right question. First of all, we need to find the right place. The issue with finding the right place is always, first of all, you've got to find the right physical place. Then you've got to try and get planning permission to do what you want to do. And then you've got to find the money to do what you want to do. Now, my plan is to sell my business. That should raise, should allow me to spend at least £1 million on the museum, which will allow me to introduce some of the more unique vehicles, the expensive vehicles that are around. What I want to do is make it an interactive museum. So we'll have the military vehicles. I'll buy a few aircraft. I'll buy a few bits of this, bits of that, everything to do with that era, cars, bikes, trucks. There's loads and loads of vehicles and items that have significance through that period. In every walk of life, there was something specific that went on that I think we need to document, and it'll be in my museum. So people who have an interest in cars will be able to come and see interesting cars from that period. People who have an interest in military vehicles will come and be able to see the interesting vehicles from that period. Hopefully some of the vehicles will be running, people will be able to take rides on them and experience some of the vehicles as well. Because I don't want it to just be walking around stationary vehicles. I want them to be seen working. I want people to come in and see people working on the vehicles. I want it to be a live museum. You know, I want to have a train track going around with 60s and 70s trains running around the thing. I want it to have, you know, a car track so people can drive around and do something. So physically it's an interactive museum, even to the point whereby I want schools to come into the museum and maybe work on vehicles, do some, you know, I don't know, courses. There's all sorts of courses for school children today to do engineering courses and things like that. Maybe come and do restoration courses in the place. I want it to be a museum of excellence, so that we can bring not only adults to come and have a look, but children to come and have a look and want to come. Because I mean, you think about going to museums, it can be really boring. You know, I mean, I go to the Bovington Museum, and okay, I mean, I'm fascinated by tanks, but I'm bored within 5 minutes. You know, and I can tell you every vehicle that's in there. You know, and I love them. If I could get on and touch them, it'd be much more interesting. But I can't. You're not allowed to. That to me is not right. They're not meant to be like that. The biggest problem, of course, is just the public tend to break everything. Even though it's a tank, they still pinch things and take things off it. So you've got to work out a way of making sure things don't happen like that. But yeah, that's the primary goal now is to find the land. Next 2 years, I wanted to be operational in the museum. I was hoping it was going to be this year, to be fair, but the sale of the company didn't go through. So they didn't offer enough money, so I have to wait. I have to grow the company a bit more, and then I'll sell it for a bit more and then get some more money for the museum. It's time for me to move on and focus on the museum. The museum is going to be my retirement. You know, I'm 55 now. I've only got 25 years left. I want to spend the next 25 years building this museum so I can leave it for the nation, so that they've got something. I've left a mark on this country, on this planet, so that people can come for the next 50 years, 100 years, 1,000 years even, coming and looking at this museum and saying, yeah, Paul O'Brien built this museum, and he built it because he wanted people to understand what went on in this incredibly significant period. I want people to understand what happened in history so that we don't have it again. We need to be free in this world. Hitler tried not to let us free. Then the Russians tried not to have freedom. They failed. Hitler failed. Everyone needs to fail. You know, they must not take away our freedoms. We must have freedom. And that's what you young people need to fight for. I'm hoping that my museum will invigorate people to recognise that we can't live like it used to do. We've got to move forward and be different. Got to.